After 40 days of gridlock, missed paychecks, and mounting public frustration, it was a group of 8 moderate Democrats in the Senate who ultimately came together to make a deal to end the government shutdown. One of them was Maine's independent Senator Angus King, who often serves as a bridge between Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill. Senator King, thank you so much for talking with us. Can you just quickly tell us the status of the vote as it stands right now?
Well, we're in sort of procedural hell right now, Katie. There are a whole series of votes. So the vote last night was a crucial initial vote on cloture on the motion to proceed. Then we have the motion to proceed, which is a 50 vote threshold. Then there'll be an amendment to put this compromise language into the bill. Then there'll be final passage. So there are 2 or 3 more votes before this can go forward. And there are lots of rules about time. So in order to do this in a timely way, today or hopefully tomorrow, there's going to have to be unanimous consent. In other words, every senator is going to have to say, okay, I'm not going to hold out for my hour or 30 hours or whatever it is. So it's a little unclear on the timing, but I think we're at a place where the final votes will be probably sometime tomorrow.
Sometime tomorrow. So let's talk about how this came together. You said the harm to everyday Americans had become too acute. What were you seeing or hearing from your constituents that made that real for you?
Well, I think first it's important to weigh the harm that was being occasioned by the shutdown, which we'll discuss, against the potential of solving this ACA tax credit issue. The problem was the chances of solving the ACA tax credit issue through the shutdown had gone pretty much to zero. So it was a situation where a lot of people were being hurt by the shutdown to no advantage, to no there was no opportunity to get the ACA issue dealt with. That was just the position the Republicans took. So let me talk about the harm. I think the most important thing is the SNAP benefits. There are 42 million people in the country who are beneficiaries of the SNAP program, 175,000 in Maine. That's 12% of our population. That's a lot of people. And, everybody's got food pantries and those kinds of things, but SNAP is at the heart of the food security situation in this country. Without SNAP, there just aren't enough resources, and we're literally talking about people going hungry. And that was the primary thing that was on my mind. Now, secondarily, of course, and I shouldn't say secondarily, but additionally, there are about 2.5 million federal workers who aren't being paid, and everybody from air traffic controllers to park rangers. I'm particularly worried about the air traffic controllers. It's no secret that we're already in a slowdown, and it could get worse. That's a matter of safety. I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody in my family landing at an airport with a sleepy air traffic controller. And we're hearing from them. I mean, they're under tremendous stress as it is. And that's a very real danger, in addition to the compounding of the inconvenience to people across the country, particularly as the holidays coming. But again, Katie, to sum it up, we were going through a lot of pain to a lot of people without any likelihood of a positive result on the ACA. If you're going to really do something like that, you ought to see an end game, and that was not in sight. And my colleagues who are upset and wanted to fight have never been able to tell me where this ends and why a month from now will be any different than it is now.
Well, having said that, let me ask you a question. Someone who follows me on Substack asked me to ask you, Senator. He said, please ask Senator King why he felt that now we can trust the Republicans when they promise to revisit healthcare subsidies, which you got assurances, by the way, parenthetically, from Senate Majority Leader John Thune on that. He says, unless we get something in writing that can be legally binding, why cave like that? Feels like the Democrats' momentum out of November 5th has been deflated and all leverage has been lost. Does this person have a point? I mean, what if you kept the pressure on? Yes, there were no negotiations going on at the moment, but do you think if the pressure had continued, Republicans would have come to the table with more than just, oh, we'll revisit this?
No, the answer is no. And I've talked to a lot of my Republican friends, particularly moderate Republicans, who you might think would be interested in. In fact, I texted today and said, "What are the chances that if the shutdown persists, that there'll be some realistic discussions on the ACA?" And the answer came back zero. So it just wasn't going to happen, Katie. And that the position they took at the beginning is we're not going to talk about or negotiate about the Affordable Care Act or the health care issue while the shutdown goes on. So the question is, was the shutdown an incentive to negotiations or an impediment? And the reality is it was an impediment. There was no caving that was going on. We got something out of this. We actually got some pretty substantial wins out of this.
Like, what did you
A lot,
get?
well, one of the things that hasn't been talked about is part of this deal is three bipartisan appropriation bills, including agriculture, which includes SNAP. If we can get this thing passed in the next couple of days here and in the House, SNAP is safe for a year. And that's a big deal. That wasn't in the original, let's keep talking. So there also veterans benefits are in the bill that's going to be on the floor this afternoon. So there were some real benefits there. Now to the question of why do you trust? Well, look, John Thune made a statement, and this was part of the negotiation. He made a very clear, unequivocal statement on the floor yesterday. I guarantee there will be a vote on a bill drafted by the Democrats within before the second week in December. Now, people can break their word, but John Thune, he's an honest guy, and I know that that's a serious commitment. He knows that this is what we're going to do. So but again, the question is compared to what? We have a commitment to a bill now. As of yesterday morning, we had zero. We had nothing. We had no commitment. And the idea that somehow after 6 weeks, they're going to decide to negotiate in the next couple of weeks, I don't know why that would be the case. We've tested that premise for 6 weeks and nothing's happened. I mean, the progressives said to me, they said, well, let's wait until November 1st when the new premiums come out. That'll push pressure on them. Well, nothing happened. Let's wait until the elections. The elections happened. That didn't change the calculus in terms of where the Republicans were. So, I'll take a 25 or 30 or 40 or 50% chance against a zero chance. And that's what really we're talking about here. And this idea that, we're standing up to Donald Trump. Well, we're giving Donald Trump more power, actually. Look what he did with SNAP benefits. He cut them off. So I understand that. I mean, everybody wants, not everybody, but everybody certainly on the center left wants to stand up to Donald Trump, and they want to get the ACA benefits. The question is, what will get us there? The shutdown wasn't doing it, and in the meantime was inflicting a lot of collateral damage. Collateral damage, is not acceptable if you're not going to gain anything in the end. A good general, Katie, if the battle plan isn't working, changes the battle plan, tries another tactic, particularly if the troops are in danger. And in this case, it's the American people that are in danger.
Senator, one of the reasons you just mentioned was the federal workforce, 2.5 million people not working. Some of those federal employees, having grown up in Arlington, Virginia, so many people I knew worked for the federal government. And some of them were having to go to food banks and they weren't getting paid. You didn't mention any concessions regarding federal employees, were there?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody that's been furloughed has to be rehired. Anybody that furloughed or laid off or RIFed after October 1st has to be rehired. Everybody gets all back pay. There's protection against RIFs going on in the future. So, yeah, there was some very strong protection for federal workers. That's what brought Tim Kaine on board. And I should have mentioned at the beginning, you mentioned 8 centrist Democrats, 4 of whom were former governors. And I think that had something to do with it. Former governors tend to be pretty pragmatic and look at what's really going to be the impact here. So yes, there's very substantial protections for the federal workers coming back. And so that's also, I should have mentioned that was part of the deal that again wasn't there until we entered into these negotiations.
Senator King, I'm curious, do you think the Democrats are now in a better position to extend health insurance subsidies under the Affordable Care Act? You say John Thune has guaranteed that they will vote on it. I know it's maybe premature to ask you this, but what makes you think that any Republicans will come to the table and want to do what the Democrats are fighting so hard to accomplish?
Well, again, a lot of it is informal conversations. And listen, Katie, if the bill that we put up is a straight extend the benefits for a year or 2 years, that won't pass. I don't have any illusions about that. On the other hand, there are issues that the Republicans have raised on this question that may be in the realm of the doable, that won't really significantly compromise the program, that may get us the votes. And that
What is
remains to be
that?
seen.
Yeah, can you explain what you're talking about?
Well, for example, one of the things that I've heard, sort of in the hallway is right now there are subsidies that can go to people making as much as $400,000, and that sticks in the craw of the Republicans. There are also situations where people have zero premium as opposed to just a token premium, and that seems to be something. And they believe that there's fraud in parts of this program. I haven't had any details on that, but if there is, clearly that's not something we want to countenance. So I'm not negotiating here. I don't know what the issues may be, but those are the kinds of things. And uh, listen. I don't. I can't guarantee success because it's a complicated process. But and of course the other question is, what about the House? Well, in the House, there are about 14 or 15 Republicans, my understanding, who want to do something on the ACA tax credits. And that 14 or 15 plus the Democrats is enough for a discharge petition to bring a bill to the floor of the House. So I do think there's a path. It's not an easy one. But again, the question is not, is this the ideal path? It's how do you compare this to the path during the shutdown, which is no path whatsoever. And that's where we are.
I'm curious what impact you think this is going to have on the Democratic Party. Obviously, there are fissures within the party. Bernie Sanders looked like he was going to have a coronary when he posted this morning what a horrific decision this was. And other people are saying the same thing. Many progressives are appalled, honestly, that you, in their view, caved along with your colleagues. Does
Well,
does this leave the Democratic Party battered and bruised?
it depends on, I mean, it depends on if the progressives and Bernie keep beating the drum. The question I've seen Bernie asked, which he hasn't answered, is what's your end game? Where does this end? Are we going to be in a shutdown forever? Is the federal government out of business? Are we not going to have SNAP benefits anymore in this country? Are we not going to have LIHEAP benefits for northern states? Are we not going to have Head Start programs anymore because they're not being funded? I mean, that's the that's the question. I listen, Katie. Last January, one of the first bills I introduced was to extend the Affordable Act tax credits indefinitely. So I'm there. This is a cause that means a lot to me. I have fought for the Affordable Care Act every step of the way, and I believe in these tax credits. But the question is, how do we get it done? And the technique that was chosen of the shutdown, and you mentioned leverage, telling the Republicans you're going to close the government isn't necessarily leverage. There are a lot of them who just soon keep the government closed. So, I understand Bernie and others are upset, but my question is, what were you getting, and what was the likelihood of getting something more 2 weeks or a month from now, when you've pretty much ended air travel in the United States, and you've got a lot of hungry people, and you got a lot of people in Maine and the northern tier states who are cold and can't pay for their heating oil. That's not worth it if you're not getting anything on the Affordable Care Act. So somehow the progressives made this the war, the battle. This was going to be how we were standing up to Trump, and it never made sense to me that you're standing up to a bully by giving him another weapon, which is what the shutdown is. Now, I do think that this whole last month and a half has been productive for the Democrats because it's vastly raised the visibility of this issue. It significantly increased the visibility of the affordability of health insurance across the country. And I think that's a very important issue. And that's one of the reasons I think maybe we can win on this vote in December, because we will have had some more pressure. The pressure on the Republicans is from the premium increases, not the shutdown. And so I'm hoping that that's what where we're going to end up. But getting a higher visibility of this issue is very important. Here's another thing, Katie, sort of deep dark politics. Right now, the law is that these tax credits expire at the end of December automatically. Nobody has to do anything. No bill passes, no votes, no nothing. We've now got a vote where the Republicans are going to have to stand up and either say, we're going to fix this or we're going to own it. Without the agreement that we made yesterday, that vote wasn't going to happen. So I believe that I don't want to claim any, strategic genius here, but I think that's something important. If you realize that without this, there was never going to the tax credits were going to go away anyway without any congressional activity. And now we've got a situation where the Republicans are going to have to stand up and declare themselves.
That's an interesting point. I know that Chuck Schumer refused to back the deal and later faced open calls to step down. Do you still think he's an effective leader?
I do. Chuck works really hard, and I think he's, it's not an easy job, that's for sure, and particularly in the minority. And it's hard to know, which battles to pick. He disagreed on this, but to somehow criticize him as leader because what's he going to do? Put me in handcuffs or Tim Kaine or Gene Shaheen? I mean, he made it clear what his position was, but we disagreed, and we think this is important for the country. And I can't predict how history will judge this, but again, I keep coming back to this. And I wish my progressive friends would. They just I don't know. I just wish they would understand this, that they weren't winning anything.
Well, did you talk to
It,
Bernie about it, Senator? I mean, he's,
I
you
have,
must know Bernie
excuse me,
Sanders. I mean, you keep saying that.
I have talked to him about it. He disagrees. And, there are others that disagree, particularly those who want to just fight, fight, fight. But, you know, um, shooting yourself in the foot may be, a fight, but it's not going to get you anything. And, I the progressives, in a sense, they say, well, it's going to demoralize the Democrats. Well, it will if they tell them that. If they keep saying, "Oh, this is terrible. We gave up. We caved," instead of fessing up that the strategy that they undertook hasn't worked, isn't going to work, and this is the best path out,
And in
and
the
they ignore the pain that's occurring to the American people. That if this, Katie, if this were a fight within the Senate about some bill or another, or whether we had to stay here for a weekend and what we were working on, that would be one thing. But they're real people's lives that are at stake here. This isn't an abstract discussion. If we don't get this shutdown over, there's going to be real hurt, for people across the country, children, elderly people, people that depend on SNAP, and you just can't say, well, we're going to fight and the pain will make it. Well, it isn't the pain on any of these senators. It's the pain on the people back in their states. And listen, the pain of not being able to afford health insurance is very real too.
and
If
some
I
people are
thought we were
saying that,
winning that, if I
yeah.
thought we were winning that battle, maybe you could argue that it's worth it. But the point is, we're following a strategy that isn't working, that's hurting a lot of people. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I'm curious, as you know, Senator, so much of politics is optics. And heretofore, I guess, according to polls, most people have been blaming the Republicans for the shutdown and more than Democrats. Do you think that this might change the optics for the Democratic Party if the shutdown ends?
Again, I think it's a little bit of that is what the Democrats say about it. If they say, if Bernie and these guys go out and say, "Oh, this was a cave, we caved, and it was terrible, and we gave in to Trump and all of that kind of thing," well, that will be part of what the message is. Uh, but that just isn't true. And again, if you have Bernie on, or Chris Murphy, or Ed Markey, or some of these people who are, really engaged in this, who I very much respect, and I respect their passion, ask them what their end game was. How would they feel if it's Christmas? We still haven't gotten any negotiations. The law is about to expire in a week, and in the meantime, people haven't gotten SNAP benefits for 2 months, and there's virtually no air travel in the country. That's the question that no one will answer.
And I guess
Uh,
now a lot of Americans so are going to say, okay, they shut down the government. It was all for naught. I guess the proof will be in the pudding in terms of John Thune making good on his promise and actually getting these Republican senators on the record about the Affordable Care Act, right? And
well,
those are a lot of ifs, but as you said earlier, you trust that this will happen.
now look, I don't want to be heard to guarantee a result on this vote. I think it's an uphill battle. The Republicans have never voted for the ACA, period.
No, what I'm saying is they'll be on record either,
Yep.
not voting for the ACA, and that will become a potent political issue for Democrats.
I think that's true. I think that's true, and I mean, and I think people should be held responsible uh, if they're not attending to this really crisis in healthcare. Katie, we pay 22% of GDP for healthcare in this country. That's one in every $5 in the country goes to healthcare. That's about twice as high as any other industrialized country in the world. So we've really got a problem on our hands. Unfortunately, for the last 10 or 15 years, all the argument has been about who pays. ACA, Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance. We really need to be talking about what we're paying because it's too much. And we should be talking about how do we promote safety, prevention, primary care, things that will lower the cost of health care. And that's an important discussion that we have to have. But again, right now, the question is how do we get out of this painful shutdown and get a solution, or at least have a chance? I want to emphasize that. I'm not saying we're going to win this vote. I hope we can. It depends on how the Democrats choose to negotiate the bill. But at least it gives us a chance, which right now, that chance is zero. And that's the point that I want to keep coming back to. And as you mentioned, there's RIF protection in this bill, protection for federal employees. SNAP benefits will flow and be guaranteed for the next year. That's part of this bill. Even though there's a possible another continuing resolution in January, SNAP's off the table if we can get this bill passed. I think that's a big win.
The president never brought Democrats into the White House. He didn't engage in negotiations. He was at a football game when the deal was coming together. Was that surprising to you that he seemed relatively disengaged from trying to solve this problem?
I was surprised. I thought this at one point. I thought maybe he would wake up and call John Thune and Speaker Johnson and say, make a deal, get this done. Instead of opting to press for negotiations, he pressed for ending the filibuster. And Katie, you talk about a disaster. If the filibuster went away, we would be facing a nationwide voter suppression law, a nationwide abortion ban, the abolishment of the ACA. So we're playing with fire here. Now, people can say, well, it was just an empty threat. I don't think so. He was putting a lot of pressure on the Senate Republicans to nuke the filibuster, and then the damage to the country that could be done over the next year and a half would be incalculable. So I'm not saying that was motivating us. What was motivating us was that the shutdown wasn't achieving the ends it was designed for, and it was time to cut our losses. But that's another thing that has to be considered. And he was very adamant with the Republicans, and if we kept saying no and kept, there were, I think the votes, there were like 14 votes to reopen the government. The Democrats voted no every time. At some point, John Thune may say, the hell with this. They're just not going to work with us. They're not going to do anything, and we're going to have to nuke the filibuster. Boy, would that be a disaster.
Let me just turn to one last thing, and it's my last question, and that is if if government, if you all are back in business, right, and Congress is in session, the newly elected uh, representative from the state of Arizona is finally going to get sworn in, right?
Right?
By
Yep.
Mike Johnson, who has said he couldn't do it. And she she may have a big impact on those pesky Epstein files
Yep.
because if she is the deciding vote, what will happen with the Epstein files? Can you explain that for me?
Sure. Well, let me back up for a minute and point one thing out. Speaker Johnson this morning said if we pass this bill in the Senate, he'll have the House back here within 36 hours. Just getting the House back into session, holy smoke, they've been gone for I don't know how long. They've just basically made
Left
themselves
town.
irrelevant.
Yeah.
And so he has said he'll call them back into session to consider this bill. I think that was a positive. In terms of the Epstein files, yes, my understanding is that she would be, I think it's the 218th vote that would be enough to do what's called a discharge petition. Again, in the Senate, the Senate Majority Leader has absolute control over what comes to the floor. And that's why this agreement with John Thune to guarantee that this bill drafted by the Democrats will come to the floor is really a significant concession. I've never seen anything like that in my 13 years here. The same goes in the House. The Speaker of the House has total control over what comes to the floor. And of course, he doesn't want to bring the Epstein file matter up. The escape hatch for the House is something called a discharge petition, which is something signed by a majority of the House, whatever that number. I mean, the majority of the 218 House members, if they sign a discharge petition, then the bill has to come up. The speaker can't sink it. So that's why her being finally sworn into office, which she should have been done 6 weeks ago, could make a significant difference in the House's action to subpoena those files.
So what does that mean exactly, Senator? Does that mean that if she's the final decisive vote, what happens to those files? I'm sorry to be confused about this, but it's complicated.
Yeah, well, the House would then have make a fully enforceable request for the data for the files. Now, of course, uh, the Trump administration is in charge of those files, so who knows whether all the files would be released or whether they'd be redacted in some way. But assume for a moment, and I realize that's a big assumption, that they play it straight, that the House would then be in a position to get those files. They should be they should be unredacted and uncensored, and then the House would have them, and they'd be made available at least in some form to the American people.
Would they do
Uh,
something with them? Would they hold hearings?
I suspect that's what I suspect they would hold. There would be some hearings. I don't really know exactly what the process would be, but it certainly would be. And I think the president and the people around him say that he's not involved, that it's all fake and everything else. If it was fake, they ought to be producing these files themselves. If you have nothing to hide, then why hide it?
Well, see,
But
it wouldn't be the first time Donald Trump misrepresented the truth, would it?
oh, Katie, I wouldn't comment on something that like that.
Have you heard from many Mainers about your what some
Yeah,
are accusing you of caving? I mean, what are you hearing from your
I've
constituents?
heard, I've heard, I don't have a count. I've gotten a lot of abuse on social media, and I've got a lot of support from around the state from people that I've known for many years or who I've worked with, who said, I got a text this morning from an old friend who said, finally, Maine common sense, good leadership. So it's varied. People are upset, but one of the things that bothers me is that the reason they're upset is that they've been spun up. I think uh, on this that this shutdown is somehow the be all and the end all to discipline Donald Trump and solve the ACA problem when it's neither of those things. And that's one of the problems with the environment that we're in now. I think, and I've got a little essay that I've been sending out to people that explain my position just as I've explained it to you, and I think most people say, "Oh, I didn't realize that." And they say, okay, well, I guess I understand now why you did what you did, because the alternative was nothing good on the ACA and a lot bad on the shutdown.
And do you expect air traffic controllers to be back on the job? You feel like air traffic is going to resume to its normal pace pretty
It
quickly?
it'll take I don't know whether it'll take a few days or a week, but I think it'll be pretty fast. I mean, it's a question of people having some assurance that they're going to get paid. I mean, most people in this country live paycheck to paycheck. Maybe U.S. senators don't, but most people do. And many people have now missed two paychecks. That means their mortgage isn't going to go away. Their car payment isn't going to go away. I talked to a Capitol policeman who can't pay his child care for his child care because he hasn't been paid. He doesn't have any income. And I think the air traffic controllers are. I think they'll be back to work. I think they want to be back to work, but they
But a lot
also,
of didn't
like
they
all the
get
rest of us, they want to be paid.
but didn't they get rid of a lot of people with Doge? I mean, this is not going to bring back a lot of government workers who were
No,
doged, if you
oh,
will. And
you're
you know what I mean?
you're absolutely right. Doge was a disaster. We could have a whole program on that. I mean, they didn't know what they were doing. They fired and riffed and pushed out people that we need, that are senior people, that people didn't. But listen, think about it this way. And I was thinking about this morning. If you came to Elon Musk and Donald Trump 6 weeks ago and said, we're going to give you the power to decide who in the federal government works and who doesn't, and who gets paid and who doesn't, and it's going to affect the entire federal government, not just a small part that Doge did, they'd say, where do I sign up? Do you see what I mean? We've given them a gift. These people that want to get rid of federal workers and want to bring all the so-called, the president says, the Democrat programs like feeding kids to a halt. This is we've handed them something that they in their dreams wouldn't have. Russell Vogt. This is a shutdown. Is Russell Vogt's dream. And so that's why I think that's one of the reasons we have to move on and get back to work. So again, this is hard, Katie. I don't enjoy getting beat up by some of my friends and people who I respect, and I know who, especially by the people who I know are hearts in the right place. They want to do the right thing. They want to get health insurance for people. They know how important it is. I do too. The only thing we differ on is the technique, is the path to get there. And I determined that the path that we were on wasn't going to get us there and was going to hurt a lot of people in the process.
Senator Angus King. Senator King, you're so nice to actually respond to our email. Please thank your staff, and thank you for hopping on this and doing this interview and kind of giving us the latest and your thinking behind this decision. So appreciate it.
Katie, thank you.